Hello and welcome back to Rev Real Estate School. I'm your host, Michael Montgomery, and today we're talking about buyer and seller seminars for real estate agents. So first off, are these worth it? Are they worth our time to painstakingly put together these presentations and actually present them to potential buyers and sellers in our community and see if they actually lead anywhere? Well, that's what we're going to start with, and then we're going to jump into some strategies that you can use if you do want to put this into practice in your business. So first off, are they worth it? Well, it really does depend. It really depends on where you are at in your business. So let's unpack this further. So if I was to ask you a question on would it be worth it for you to have to research the market, better understand the market, put together a presentation, get out of your comfort zone and have to work on your public speaking, potentially meet some leads. Is this something that would be worth your time? Now, most people would say yes. And under most circumstances, these are 100% worth it. And we're going to discuss why shortly. However, there is another side to the coin where it may not be worth it. And it may not be worth it if your pipeline is already full. If you already have enough pillars to your business that this becomes a distraction and takes away from your ability to market through other mediums. So if that's you, if you already have a full stream of business coming in and you don't necessarily have the time to explore another strategy, then it's not worth it. And the reason for that is you will have to dedicate time and resources for this for about 12 months. And then after that, you will see a huge spike in potential business. However, you have to be willing to put in the time. So if that's not something that you have access to right now because you're so busy with other marketing campaigns, then it may not be worth it. But in most cases, it really is. So let's make a case for why this is extremely valuable for you and your real estate business. Well, the main reason is most other real estate agents will not do it. And that is really the power behind this strategy. And most real estate agents won't do it because it's too nerve-wracking to actually have to put on a presentation. What if nobody shows up? What if you fumble over your words? What if it just crashes and burns and is not worth your time at all? These are the things that are going through everyone's mind, and mine included when I did my first one. And so because we can get over that, there's actually a huge opportunity for us. Now, for most of us, we have this underlying feeling of fear. Whenever we bring up buyer and seller seminars and us standing in front of a room or standing in front of a camera and actually doing this virtually, we get all nervous. And this is why there's opportunity. Now, whenever you see yourself getting nervous or being fearful of something, especially when it comes to marketing and prospecting, that should be considered a green light. Now, what is a green light? Well, typically when we encounter fear, we think red light, we think stop. So anytime that there's something that could be scary or could be harmful for us, we think stop. But in fact, when we feel that fear in real estate, that's a green light. We need to go towards that. We need to go faster towards that green light. Now, let's look at this red light, green light in more detail. There's certain marketing campaigns that don't really generate a lot of fear for us. And oftentimes those are campaigns that we just put them out there and then we wait. So for example, postcards, or a really good example is online leads. We just put out an ad and we wait for people to come back. Now that doesn't tend to elicit a lot of fear. So a lot of people want to do it. And because of that, it's a crowded space. So the online lead game is extremely crowded because everyone's doing it because it doesn't require a lot of bravery to actually go out there and post an online ad. Instead, we just put money behind it and let it do its job. Now let's look at, for example, the buyer seminar. Let's say you're hosting a first-time home buyer's buyer seminar. Well, there's a lot of fear. You could get rejected. People might not show up. The presentation might not go well. There's a lot of fear built into that. So when we have these feelings, especially in real estate, when we're thinking about prospecting, we should go towards that and not away from it. And so this is another really good reason to start thinking about bringing in these sort of strategies, is because if there's something out there that makes you feel a little uneasy, it very likely makes other real estate agents feel uneasy, which means it's an opportunity for us if we're able to continue on and do this well. So I know what you're thinking, easier said than done. How do we just get rid of fear? Well, there's actually nothing to be concerned about when we think about this. And it all comes down to how we frame it. So if we frame it as we're going to host a buyer or seller seminar and we need to get 5 or 6 leads, hot leads that are going to come out of this, and we need to make sure that our presentation is perfect and we answer all of their questions perfectly, well, that's just going to cause our anxiety levels to rise. However, if we reframe this as an opportunity to learn, and this is the way that I did my first one, was it doesn't matter how it went. It could have gone well, it could go poorly, that doesn't matter. The first 3 are really just practice. And realistically, everything in real estate is practice. Your next listing presentation, your next tour, your next offer you write, these are all practice moments for us. There's no big main stage. And as soon as we remove that concept of us always being on stage, the easier this sort of strategy becomes. Instead, there is no failure in this. All we're going to do is we're going to learn. Regardless, there's going to be certain parts that are going to go well, there's going to be certain parts that may not, and we're going to learn, we're going to grow from it. So we need to drop all expectation. We need to drop all expectation of what we're looking for and treat this as a learning opportunity. Now, here's another great thing about these seminars, is we can repurpose the content. So let's think about this in a little bit more detail. So we've all heard of repurposing content. We shoot a video, so then we turn that into a blog post. Well, we can do the same thing with our buyer and seller seminars. We can repurpose them, and we can repurpose them in many ways. So first off, there are the ideas. There's what we're going to be learning in putting this presentation together. We're going to be better understanding our market. So this doesn't mean that I'm necessarily repurposing the content, but yes, of course, you can do that. We're also repurposing the ideas. So how we go about communicating and what we extract from our learnings, we can then also bring that into practice for our clients. So if I'm researching on how to sell for the highest price in my given market, I'm probably going to learn something in researching that, and I can recycle that idea and then help my current sellers as well. So it's not just reusing the content, it's also reusing the learning that we acquire throughout the process of building this. Now, of course, we're also able to reuse the content. So we're able to then go ahead and take this content, take this presentation, and turn it into a lunch and learn for a company in your city, or turn it into a lunch and learn for your chamber of commerce, or your group that you network with. So you can actually take this presentation and you can repurpose it for use in another case. So that's, of course, the obvious way to reuse these, and you want to do this. You do not want to put more work on yourself than you have to. Reuse these presentations. And finally, you'll be reusing your skills. So through this, you're going to become a better public speaker. You're going to be uncomfortable, and that's going to make you into a better public speaker. Now, we've talked about this before. Public speaking and listing and buyer presentations go hand in hand. So those that are very strong at public speaking tend to also be very strong when it comes to listing presentations and buyer presentations. And that's because they can communicate their ideas. And they can also handle these situations where anxiety levels rise. And so what you're actually gaining from this is, yes, all of the ideas, yes, the content, but you're also gaining a skill set. And you can reuse that skill set when you're out with clients as well. So these are very powerful ways that you can grow your business, and it doesn't just come down to one isolated buyer or seller seminar. There's a lot of ancillary benefits that can come from this. Okay, so if you're convinced that this could be a worthwhile strategy to explore, let's talk about how you can actually set these up. Let's get tactical about how you can set these up. Well, the first thing is understanding what your topic is. Now, you don't want the topic to be too narrow, but you also don't want the topic to be too broad. So an example of this is just buying. Buying a home is probably too general, but buying a home in one small community in your city is probably too narrow. So we have to be thinking about how we can actually niche this down without making it too restrictive. Now, I know this flies in the face of a lot of other stuff out there, which is differentiation and get unique and make sure that you have a very specific message. Now, when it comes to these seminars, yes, you can still do that. For example, having a home buying seminar on how to buy in XYZ community could be a good strategy for you. However, the attendance could be lower. So instead, I like to think of a niche that is broad yet narrow. And so one of the most classic examples here are investor seminars. So investor seminars tend to be very popular in different cities. And if there isn't one in your city and you are very interested in investment real estate, this could be a great use of time. Now, one word of warning, sometimes when it comes to investors, these can be a very tricky type of client to focus on. That's not to say you shouldn't do it, but you should be prepared that it's going to take a lot of time, and you also are going to have to make sure that you're pairing with the right investors, investors with motivation, investors with skills, and you're not necessarily just working with investors that aren't loyal to their given agent. Another example, and this is actually one that I've been to, was on how to build a certain style of home. And this was with a realtor and a home builder and also a mortgage broker. And they were showing you, how do you build the home? How do you sell the home? And then how do you get a mortgage for the home? So these are great strategies, and we can also lean on different partners, home builders and mortgage brokers. So what are some other ideas? Well, we talked about investing. We talked even about first-time home buyers earlier on. We talked about building and building different product types. Maybe it's condominiums or gated communities, so a certain type of product. It could also be luxury. It could also be golf course communities. You could also talk about a real estate forecast. You could talk about steps to selling in X price range. You could also talk about home design tips in order to sell for more money. So what you're seeing here is there is a connection. There's a connection with all of this and then actually the sale of real estate. So we don't necessarily want something that is related to a house, but doesn't actually connect us to buying and selling real estate. Now, if you're thinking, okay, well, I have to create all of these different presentations, what you're going to learn here as we move forward is you don't have to. Instead, we slowly want to drip these out. Now, the other thing before we move on from niche is if you are looking to differentiate your business, and down in the description below, we'll link up a video all about differentiation. And if you watch this, you can choose how you want to differentiate yourself, and then you can create seminars around that differentiation point. Now, if you're looking to break into the luxury market and you are doing luxury seminars, well, then from there, you are going to be branded as the luxury agent. You're going to be posting this on your personal social media. Your followers are going to see that you're doing these events based around luxury real estate, and you will make your way into the luxury market. So it's a great way to actually get into a certain niche and to differentiate yourself is just by hosting these seminars. So how do we go about actually hosting them? Well, there's two different ways, really. We can go virtual or we can go in person. Now, if we go virtual, it's going to have lower friction. It's going to be easier. However, our conversion rate is probably going to be lower. Or we could do in person. That's going to have a higher conversion rate, but it's going to be more challenging and potentially even more costly. So which one do we choose? Well, what I would suggest is start virtual and then move to in-person. So do your first 3 or 4 virtually, and this will help you get comfortable with presenting. This will help you find your voice, and this will help you get comfortable actually putting on these presentations. And then from there, try to move them into in-person. Because in person, we're going to have more, of course, face-to-face conversations, which is going to lead to a higher conversion rate. Now, I actually spoke to an agent in Australia who does a ton of these. And this is what he said. He said he does one of these a month, and his conversion rate is 50% to in-person meeting. So 50% of the people that he meets in person at one of his events turn into some one-on-one meeting. And 1 in 6 of those people turn into an actual client. And so that's a pretty good conversion rate, 1 in 6 people. So even if we take into consideration that he's been doing this for years, so his conversion rate is very likely going to be higher than ours. Let's say we have a 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 conversion rate. So every 15 people that come to one of our events in person, that ends up leading into a client. Or if it's virtual, maybe it's a little bit more. Now, in my opinion, that is definitely worth it. If 1 in 15 people that came through an open house bought a house from you, would you do more open houses? Absolutely, for sure. So here's another strategy that we can use that does tend to have a very high conversion rate. And the reason for that is there is trust, there's rapport built, and that's so much easier to build in person. But when we're getting started, that can also cause a lot of friction, and that can stop us from wanting to move forward. So instead, move fast. Do a virtual one, do one next month, do one next week. So we want to move very, very quickly on this so that we can learn and we can start to get comfortable doing these and then eventually move to in-person after we've done about 3 or 4 of these virtual. Which then leads us into our cadence. So how often should we be having them? Well, something that we can really follow is just doing 1 a month. And doing 1 a month is not really overly challenging. And there's a few different ways that we can play this. But once a month, we can have a certain topic. And again, if we're going very niche and we want to focus on our differentiation point, we can continue to focus on that. So if it's a luxury, maybe we do a luxury buying and then we do luxury selling. And then we do waterfront buying and we do waterfront selling, let's say. So we can get very, very granular. But if we want to focus on something that is broad but also narrow, maybe 1 month we're doing luxury, maybe 1 month we're doing condos. Now, again, if we want to focus on a niche, we should be focusing on repeating the same type of content. However, if we are keeping it relatively general to a general audience, we still want it to be narrow, but not too narrow. We want it to be broad, but not too broad, because we want to have a large enough audience, but we also want it to be specific enough where people actually raise their hand and say, this is applicable to me. Now, a quick tip that you can use if you are doing these monthly, and if you're doing them virtually, you can do Evergreen Webinars. And Evergreen Webinars are you recording that first webinar and then basically having a recording of it over and over again. So what you can do is you can have one at the start of the month, and then every week thereafter, you have an evergreen webinar. So you're just recording that webinar off the start, and then you're attending, you're in the audience, and you're actually letting the presentation occur, and then you're answering questions as part of the webinar because it's actually recorded. And so this can be a great way for you to generate leads week over week using the same content that you used before, especially if you're doing this virtually. Now, you can't do Evergreen in person, of course, but you can do this virtually. So there's a lot of power behind Evergreen webinars. Now, they tend to not convert as high as in person, of course, or even live. But that being said, it can be a great strategy, and all you have to really do is sit there in the background and answer questions. So this leads us to our final point. Let's say we do this. How do we end up going about following up? Because we know that that is really what matters at the end of the day. Just hosting it but not following up isn't going to get us anywhere. So every single person that attends, or every single person that signs up even, should be getting a one-to-one communication. And so you can send them a video email thanking them and asking them if there's any questions that they have. The other thing we do want to outright ask them here is we do want to ask them if they need any help on their real estate journey. Very simple question, very easy to ask, but also very impactful. So we're asking them if they do actually want any help on their real estate journey. And what this will do is sometimes the answer is going to be no, because they're already using a real estate agent, and that's great because we do not have expectations here. We are here to provide free information to help them along this real estate buying and selling process. However, we also want to leave our door open so that they can come and choose us should they so choose. And so by actually raising our hand and letting them know that we can help, we are actually leaving that door open. And that's really what we want to do. So ultimately, this strategy can work extremely well. This strategy can be great, not only for us personally, but also for leads, and then also just for growing our overall skills and our ideas in real estate. So it's not a poor use of your time. These can be a great strategy, and you can become a better realtor by doing them. But an important point to remember is that we're not having expectations, we're giving away freely, and then also we're following up and we're taking care of these people, and from there our business will grow. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at the.michael.montgomery, or head over to revrealestateschool.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next lesson.